And your website is?
Oh, it's Racine Uncensored. It's on Facebook. I do not put mugshots of any citizens, but I'll put mugshots of city officials. Watch out.
All right. Good morning. Welcome back to Talking Racine. I'm Dr. Ken Jorgen, your host. And I have a special guest this morning, Mr. Ricky Jarstead.
Hello.
And we're going to discuss an issue that's topical here in Racine right now and has been for some time, actually. And that is the issue of cannabis. There is an initiative going forth in the county to decriminalize cannabis further. Well, actually, it's an initiative for a non-binding referendum to be placed on the ballot. But I think we should go back and study a little bit of the history here. A year ago, the Green Party of Racine had an initiative for direct legislation, which means that if you gather enough signatures, you can actually legally cause the municipal governing body, in this case it would have been the city council of the city of Racine, to place on the ballot whatever it is that you want them to. And then the voters have an opportunity to vote yea or nay on that initiative. And we could have actually changed the law. And the idea was to decriminalize cannabis in the city of Racine.
We're able to collect all these signatures in less than in 32 days.
Racine's Green Party co-chair says those 5,000 signatures are proof the city wants change in its marijuana laws. While our cameras were rolling,
So you just sign here.
another signature at their office. The group's plan would allow up to 25 grams of marijuana in Racine if you're using it at home or at a friend's house.
25 grams of weed would essentially fill this standard-size Ziploc bag to the top. New York Magazine reports it would have a street value of about $300.
Even though changing city code would not protect you from state charges, Maldonado says it sends a message.
The reality is that, again, the people have spoken once again, that they're ready to move forward.
We reached out to Racine police over the past 2 days, but never heard back. The Green Party plans to turn in those signatures by August 2nd. The decision could be up to voters in the spring. In Racine, Ben Wagner, WISN 12 News.
Right now in Racine, possessing 25 grams of marijuana or less carries a $225 fine. The Green Party proposal would drop that fine to $1, though police can still refer the case to prosecutors for criminal charges under state law.
It's already been decriminalized to a degree, but the police department has not been following that decriminalizing effort. They've been following the state law, which is more harsh. And there's a lot of people that are suffering as a result of it. Now, the Green Party gathered 5,218 signatures from citizens who said, yes, put that on the ballot.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sandra Plunkett, co-chair to the Racine Green Party, along with Fabi Maldonado, co-chair as well, and Southeastern Wisconsin Normal Executive Director Eric Marsh. We are proud to announce that today, Independence Day 2017, we have officially accomplished, with your help, the necessary amount of signatures to get decriminalization of marijuana on the ballot for next spring.
And yeah, I want to say thank you very much again to the citizens of Racine. And it only took us 32 days to decriminalize marijuana here in the city of Racine. The Republicans and the Democrats have had power for decades and have not been able to accomplish, and we did it in 32 days. We have a very aggressive plan that we're going to have throughout the state, not just here in the city of Racine, but our plans to branch out in Wisconsin. Eric's going to talk about that a little bit more in detail.
So our plan is to have these municipal initiatives to decriminalize marijuana in dozens of cities across the state over the next year. And the ultimate plan is to have over 500,000 or even an entire million people across the state of Wisconsin with the marijuana decriminalization initiative on their ballot in November 2018, so that we can help keep thousands of people out of jail, and so we can force the issue of marijuana decriminalization and legalization into the gubernatorial and legislative races next year.
So, keep getting out there, signing this petition. We're trying to get as many names as possible to show this city exactly how much support you guys have for this cause. Thanks again. You've been amazing.
Thank you, Racine.
Thank you.
And then the clerk's office and other people were involved. They disqualified 1,575 of those citizen signatures and made the initiative 195 signatures short. So then the people who were involved, and I myself was involved to a degree gathering some signatures, well over 200 signatures were reviewed and corrected. But once again, the city shut it down and said, no, you're 125 short. Which was a pretty bogus determination. I mean, it was the will of the people that wanted this on the ballot, and it was not there. And I really sometimes I question, what the heck is their problem with this? I mean, I know the history of it pretty well, and we'll talk about that later on. But let's talk about this initiative that's going on right now about a non-binding referendum. You've got some information about that, huh?
Oh, I do. Well, it was last year during the Green Party's decriminalizing efforts. Alderman Tate had refused to sign that referendum, but all of a sudden he's for it.
Alderman Tate, would you like to speak to your motion?
Sure. So part of the reason for this referendum is first and foremost in our debate, hopefully amongst this floor, stays focused on putting the question to the constituents. This isn't a debate about whether we support it or not as a council. It's whether we support our constituency weighing in on legalization for recreational or medical use. Part of the reason I brought it forward was because more than likely in the next legislative session, our state government will be debating this topic, and they will be looking for data in terms of constituent response is how they go. And it's important that the City of Racine residents have an opportunity for their data to be gathered and sent to the state in regards
change of heart? Or maybe something else.
It's voting season.
It is voting season, and this is a hot topic.
It is a hot topic.
And there's every reason to suspect, well, in fact, we actually know, that this is an initiative that is put forth specifically to draw voters to the ballot box in November.
And it's taking place in several counties: Kenosha, Sauk, Milwaukee, what was the other one? Dane, I believe, and I'm
fine with that, really. I mean, if you want to use this as a means of getting people out to vote, that's great. But I just hope that they're sincere in the idea of having this referendum go somewhere. A non-binding referendum isn't going to change the law at all. The law will be completely unchanged. But what the referendum does is it tells the governing body, the governing officials, what the will of the people is. So if it comes back and there's like a 60% support, which is typically what happens with these kinds of referendums, that will send a clear signal to the local officials that maybe you should consider revising the law. And I think that's what people like you and I are behind it about. I mean, great, they're going to get more people to the ballot box, but the real thing is we want to get some change in motion.
We do. Marijuana is just a plant. It's closely related to hemp, and hemp doesn't have any of the
well, they're both cannabis. Now, what's typically called marijuana, and that's a made-up name, really. Marijuana was devised to give this an exotic-sounding name, so that people would think, oh, that's some strange stuff. Cannabis was very, very well known at the time these laws came in. Oh, my God, it's been almost 100 years ago. It's hard to believe. And hemp was one strain of the cannabis plant, and it was used for industrial purposes. Hemp fields were all over the United States.
Oh, yeah. The Constitution is written on hemp paper.
Yeah, and there was a time where, I think it was during Washington's time, where he actually mandated that farmers grow a certain amount of hemp, a certain acreage of hemp.
They did during World War II, too. It was hemp for victory during World War II.
Right. Yeah, because, it's a strange history. There's reasons why marijuana or cannabis or hemp was illegalized. And there's kind of a triad of reasons. First, it was about social control. Second, it was about the new fibers that DuPont was putting out, which people were not preferring to hemp fiber. So in order to have an economic advantage, DuPont was in favor of having hemp legalized. And thirdly, hemp pulp which is part of the stalk of the hemp plant, makes excellent paper. It's acid-free, so it doesn't degrade like pulp paper does. You know how paper turns brown? Hemp doesn't do that. So the guy who owned vast holdings of pulp forest happened to be William Randolph Hearst, who also put out an awful lot of newspapers and magazines, Hearst Publishing. So you had Hearst Publishing, you had the DuPonts, and you had this crazy guy by the name of Harry Anslinger, who was very, very anti-cannabis, and he was basically a racist. I mean, he was. I'll read some quotes from Harry Anslinger, and the guy was unbelievably racist, and he wanted to control certain segments of the population. So they all gathered together, and they put together this initiative, and Anslinger was the first drug czar in the United States of America, and they've been demonizing, well, not just hemp, but other substances as well. You know, cocaine and opiates were also demonized. Those are a little more problematic than marijuana. In fact, marijuana was given Schedule I status, which means it's addictive, it's dangerous, and it has no redeeming qualities whatsoever, which is absurd.
It is very absurd.
Yeah, but it's been a Schedule I drug ever since those laws were first put into effect. So, back to this referendum. This is going to be going in front of the county board on the 28th, is it?
Either the 26th or the 28th.
Passed the Government Services Committee unanimously.
It did.
Yeah. We were both there at the presentation. Did you speak at that?
No, I think I was late. I had trouble going out in the country.
Oh, okay. Well, I gave a statement that evening, and
very articulate.
A lot of other people gave statements as well. Some of them were really heartrending. Some of the personal stories that people have given about their experiences with both being criminalized and not having access to the medicinal hemp products.
I just want to give a first-hand account of how myself and my family have benefited from cannabis, more specifically CBD. I have four daughters, two of which are autistic. And we're trying to figure out what to do to help them, and we did a lot of research, tons and tons of research to figure out what was right. We didn't just, let's go for weed. That was not our intention at all. It was to do some research and figure it out. Based on our research, we figured CBD was the route to go. Didn't know where to get it. We found out ways to get it, and gave it to our autistic daughter. The very first day, she told her mommy and daddy, "I love you," for the very first time. She was able to regulate her emotions. She was able to process information into her frontal lobe the way neurotypical people do.
It's been argued that marijuana is a gateway to other drugs. We can see now in other states that it's actually helping to shut that gate. There were 2 studies released last April that said that opioid addiction has gone down in states that had legalized marijuana, and this is probably because people were using this as a pain reliever rather than prescription opioid.
I want to share a story with you. In 2011, well, before I start that, I guess I'm here to talk to you about the overprescribing of the opiate epidemic that we have in the heroin crisis. In 2011, I woke up and I found my 2-year-old son passed away in his bed. He actually died of a fentanyl overdose. I had taken him to visit my grandmother at a nursing home a couple days before, and they were not disposing of the fentanyl patches properly. They were just being tossed in garbage cans. He was in a Halloween costume. He had a toy truck, a pumpkin. Somehow, I changed a shitty diaper there. Somehow it was transferred to our house, and before he went to bed, he put a 1/2-inch piece of clear plastic by 1 inch tall in his mouth, and the medical examiner said he was dead within minutes. I found him the next morning. My grandmother was taken off the fentanyl patch less than a month later because she was being overprescribed it. It was not even necessary for her to be on it. Within 3 months, my doctor had put me on 9 different pills a day, 31 pharmaceuticals. It's 11,315 pills a year I was taking. I literally lived my life for 5 years in an opiate-induced pharmaco-suicidal haze. I didn't know who I was. I had a super successful landscaping company when my son passed away. these things destroyed my life. I knew I couldn't live for a long time. I thought this is just how I'm supposed to feel the rest of my life. With what happened with my son, I'm supposed to be this miserable. And I finally realized that I was only halfway through my life. I have 2 5-year-old twin girls. I'm a great father. And I put myself in the hospital last July 4th. And I picked that day because it was Independence Day, a day that I was going to be independent from these pharmaceuticals. And when I was in the hospital, a post came across Facebook on PTSD and cannabis, and I started researching it, and I started realizing that, seeing that it helped with anxiety and depression and sleep. And since July 7th, I have not taken one pharmaceutical. I use cannabis 3 times a day. I'm a great, back to being a great business owner. I'm an excellent father. I attend everything. I'm an excellent husband.
I was wondering, did any of you like Eric Clapton? I don't want to date you or anything. I'm just asking. Did you know he's epileptic? He is epileptic. He does a concert in every state of the union to promote epilepsy awareness. He didn't know it until he quit recreational drugs. He went to the doctor, and the doctor said to him, "Have you been doing recreational drugs?" And he said, "My whole life." And he said, "Well, you've always been epileptic. You've just been self-medicating."
And when it came time to vote, I mean, there was some discussion. They wanted to change things in it, and eventually they decided to pass it the way that it was written and submitted to them. But one of the members of the committee said, "I don't know how we can vote against this in all good conscience after what we've heard here tonight."
Yeah, several people offered their testimonies. They had health problems where the compounds in cannabis were helping them, and they couldn't legally use it, so they were voicing their opinions and trying to get their representatives to get on board.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been having this conversation for what, 50, 60 years?
Well, it intensified in around 1970 when Nixon was president, and he ramped up the war on drugs. He created the war on drugs and intensified the fight against marijuana. And I got a quote from him, from his, what was his title? He was the Chief of Domestic Affairs, John Ehrlichman. So now the initiative is being carried forward by who?
Is being carried forth by Alderman John Tate in the city, on the city level. And a funny thing, he did not sign the 2017 Green Party papers to put decriminalizing marijuana on the ballot with a $1 fine. And I have a quote here from somebody who helped get the signatures, and he said, quote, "The entire time the so-called progressives on the city council stood in our way. Police Chief Howell lied to us in front of the African American Round Table, which after mentioning the damage he was doing to the community, the entirety of the council went after him because of the policies he sets as chief when it comes to targeting and what statutes they choose to charge people with." So basically the police department is ignoring the city ordinance that says it's a fine, a citation of what, $200-300?
Yeah, it's basically a ticket.
Yeah, so he wouldn't sign the petition that gave people the $1 fine, but now, because it's your election season, he is pushing this referendum at the city level to just get people's opinion on the matter. And we've known how people in Racine have thought about marijuana since 1990 when the ordinance decriminalizing first offense under 28 grams was passed. We have polls from 2014 and 2016 that show that every year the number of people supporting legalizing marijuana has grown exponentially. So,
yeah, well,
like little
politics.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Well, like I said, I'm in favor of it if it brings more people out to vote. But I wish it was something that would really would make a difference, would have some teeth to it. What about Mayor Mason? Where does he stand on this issue?
Well, back in 2014, he wrote a Facebook post which he said, quote, "Marijuana is not one of his big priorities," unquote. So he actually is over the police department. He sets precedent to the police department. The police chief sets precedent to the officers. And honestly, nothing has changed from the previous administrations. Marijuana is still being enforced heavily and heavy-handedly by the city police department. I saw a video about someone stopped near Tino's on Washington, and they were roughed up because of marijuana. And that was the only issue with that case. And so nothing has changed.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the city ordinance says that it's just a citation as opposed to the state statute criminalizing marijuana possession. So,
where do you think we're going to go from here? What do you expect to happen? I know that the committee of the county board passed this unanimously the other night.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
From here, I see the referendum coming back after we vote, and it'll, going by the polls from 2014, 2016, there's going to be major support for it in the city, honestly. Probably in the county, too.
Mm-hmm. Getting back to Mayor Mason, didn't you, we were having a discussion earlier, and didn't you say that you had done some research? He had said that he never had been contacted by anybody.
He did. He admitted in a 2014 post, well, he didn't admit, he said that he has never been contacted about medical marijuana from any of his constituents while he was our state rep for 10 years? Something like 10 years.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of documents leaked from his office through a FOIA request showed that he was contacted about 100 times by his constituents regarding legalizing marijuana. And all he kept saying is, basically, it's a law, we can't do anything.
And it's not a priority. Now, it's easy to say it's not a priority and say that there are other things that take precedent. You know, it's just people wanting to get high. But the fact of the matter is that there are an awful lot of people that are incarcerated for marijuana possession and use, and they're being fined heavily, and it's very disruptive to their personal economic status. The enforcement of the law, has that been equitable?
No, absolutely not. They did a report in, I forget when it was, 2 out of every 3 people arrested for marijuana in Racine were African American, but only 1/3 of those given second chances were African American. So basically, the rates of use in marijuana are about equal.
Yeah, but there's very little disparity in the use rates. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very lopsided. Most people are arrested for.
Well, you mean the arrest is lopsided. The use is relatively even.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are basically enforcing marijuana laws in the inner cities and not in the western half of the city or the north. It's basically just the center of the city that they're really enforcing these laws.
Yeah.
And it's giving the police reason to just pull people over. Oh, I smelled something. I'm going to pull them over.
Well, yeah, we did a segment not too long ago where we talked about the dogs, too, and the reliability of the dogs. I mean, everybody thinks that these dogs are miraculous, and they are not. The failure rate on dog detection of drugs is very, very high. It's, if I'm remembering right, well, I know that there were some instances where the failure rate was as high as 90%, but 50% and higher is fairly common. But, you know, they'll walk around your car and, oh, the dog, he gave me a sign. We got a hit here. We're going to have to search your vehicle, you know. And who do they bring the dogs out for and how often? You know, I don't know what the statistics are on that, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to discover that there's a disparity there racially as well.
Oh, of course.
I mean, the incarceration rate in southeast Wisconsin, which is Racine and Milwaukee and surrounding area, is highest for African American males in the nation, higher than anywhere else in the country. And of course, because the United States incarcerates more of its citizens and a higher percentage of its citizens than any other country in the world, we're living in the most dangerous place to live if you happen to be an African American.
I will give Alderman Tate a little credit here.
Yeah.
The issue of the city ordinance was raised during the Common Council meeting on Monday. Yes, it was on Monday because Tuesday was National Night Out. Alderman Glenn brought up the city ordinance and questioned the city attorney several times. I assume because Tate heard from the community and Alderman Glenn brought up the issue of the city ordinance.
This ordinance is specifically as is permitted by state law. The state defines how municipalities can have citations for violation of possession of marijuana. The city of Racine could not, for instance, say it'll be a civil violation if someone possesses 50 grams of marijuana. The state says 25 grams or less, that's it, and only a first violation. So what this ordinance says is if somebody has a first violation possession of 25 grams or less, then it may be cited under this ordinance. If someone has more than 25 grams of marijuana, or if that person has a prior conviction for marijuana, that person may not be cited under this ordinance. So it's very specific circumstances where citation under this ordinance may happen.
Alder Glenn, did that answer your question?
No, so then when we go by the state, Wisconsin state statute for this. So, and it doesn't say in here your first offense or whether it be your 30th offense.
Actually, it does, ma'am.
Is that in the Wisconsin? Is that?
Alderman Tate has brought up the issue, and I don't know, how do I say this? He has...
Let it rip, Ricky. Do you approve of what he's been doing?
I don't approve of it so far, but I approve of him pushing forward an ordinance.
Getting on the right side of the initiative, yeah.
He basically, the Common Council, what he's pushed forward, the Common Council and the mayor should tell the police chief, hey, if this person's only caught with a little bit of marijuana, it's their first offense. Mm-hmm. It should be the city ordinance as opposed to state statute. State statute is forever on your record.
Well, you know, another interesting part of the Green Initiative was every offense shall be treated as a first offense.
I like that.
Yeah, you could be stopped every day and fined $1, and that would be the extent of it, you know. Yeah. And really, this is it's kind of a thought crime. It's like this is the only situation that I'm familiar with where you're being arrested for being a potential criminal. You know, they say that marijuana use leads to crime, and therefore it has to be criminalized. But there's no evidence to support that whatsoever.
Oh, no.
I mean,
I would like to say, who are the progressives on the city council that this person that was collecting the signatures for the Green Party initiative, who are the progressives on the city council that stood in their way?
I'm not sure. I wish the progressives on the city council would identify themselves, because it'd be interesting to know that they're there. Actually, I know that there are a couple that are fairly progressive.
Well, we know who signed the petition.
Yeah.
Sandy Widener.
Ray DeHaan and his wife signed it, and then their signatures were removed in the process of purging some of the signatures. Now, they signed, and they knew what they were signing, and then later on, somehow or another, their signatures were removed and disqualified by the city clerk's office, and some other people who were, well, as far as I'm concerned, they were co-conspirators in trying to keep this thing off the ballot.
Yeah. I'm surprised more alderpersons didn't sign it, though. They represent their constituents, and
well, I don't know how many were directly approached, quite honestly. Yeah, I don't know that they were all approached.
Well, we know Mayor Mason didn't sign it.
No.
Well, it's not a big.
So what else you got here?
I have about the DA, the district attorney,
Miss Tricia Hansen.
Yes, Miss Hansen was going after CBD oil not too long ago,
which has no THC content in it at all, and THC is the active component of cannabis, and cannabidiol, CBD, has great medicinal value. It's been proven repeatedly and overwhelmingly proven that it has value now, and she's still going after it.
Oh yeah. She took some slack. She has backed up a little bit off the issue. Mm-hmm. They were going into stores and they were saying, hey, if we catch you selling these, like the gummy bears, CBD gummy bears, we'll just talk to you. No fine at first. But if, she's kind of backed up from that now, considering Walmart was selling CBD oil in Mount Pleasant not too long ago. I mean, what's she going to do? Is she going to go after Walmart? Is it the... So I think that's a little bit why she backed up, and a lot of heat from the citizenry. They were talking about, hey, this isn't doing anything. It doesn't get you high.
Well, it seems a little hypocritical to me that she would go after CBD oil. And I remember when Rich Chiapetta, the then DNA, got drunk, crashed his car, knocked over a tree and a traffic light over on the north side on Main Street, ran home. When the police got there and confronted him, he lied to them. And oh, Patricia Hansen was so supportive of Rich Chiapetta. I mean, he's such a wonderful person. We have to forgive him this little thing. But man, oh man, some little kid with a reefer in his pocket, bang, off to jail you
Police say
go.
Racine County District Attorney Rich Chiapetta was driving drunk when he crashed his car at this north side intersection.
This car crash sent police on a path straight to the district attorney's doorstep.
I want to get somebody to cover you.
Rich Chiapetta crashed his car into a traffic light and tree before running home and changing clothes. He told officers he was sleeping, then admitted to driving.
It was right here on the corner of Main and Melbourne where officers discovered this snapped light pole and tree and Chiapetta's abandoned car. Witnesses say it was too dark to see what the driver looked like, but they weren't prepared for what happened next.
The guy started running down the street towards the north.
That Rich Chiapetta committed a crime. I believe that it was more than an ordinance violation for his drunk driving because he ran from the scene of a crime and he went home. He obviously, allegedly obstructed and lied and said his wife drove.
But I will tell you that today that I still have not seen those police reports because they were locked by the Racine Police Department. And they did not ask us to do any kind of a review because it would have been wildly inappropriate for us to do that. Those charges were referred to the city attorney's office because they don't work for us or with us. And the city attorney's office made its decisions on charging. They had the option to contact the attorney general, go above our head and ask that a complaint be filed.
So what I'm going to do at this point is I want to defer to the best Attorney General in the United States for that introduction. And thank you all for everything.
Guilty. Racine County District Attorney reaches a plea deal in his drunk driving case. The deal was announced late today. New at 10, the man handling the case tells 12 News the DA didn't get any special treatment.
It became obvious that Mr. Chiapetta had lied to police officers for a short period of time when they began the investigation.
Deputy City Attorney Scott Letney says telling police he was asleep at the time of the accident got Chiapetta slapped with an obstructing an officer charge.
He's pleading guilty to all the violations. There's forfeitures of around $1,200 imposed, plus a driver's license revocation of a year. Assuming the judge accepts it, I can't imagine anything else will happen.
Chiapetta told 12 News he has no plans to resign from his position and apologized for his actions on Monday. Letney says there was no conflict of interest with the deal as he really doesn't know Chiapetta.
There's not a person in the room here that I don't care about. Thank all my brothers and sisters here in law enforcement. I want to give a special thanks to the Attorney General.
I don't like that kind of law enforcement at all. So
no, we have to prioritize our law enforcement, and what it is, like I said, the mayor sets the precedent for the police chief. The police chief sets the precedent for the officers. It comes from the top. This last administration was not friendly to marijuana at all.
No.
Actually, I have the statistics. They were, I think, we're third when it comes to marijuana arrests out of the state, right after Walking Day. And
we're certainly not the third largest city in the state any longer.
No.
By far.
Yeah, we were even ahead of, what was it, Kenosha.
We're ahead of Kenosha. We'd be ahead of Green Bay. Green Bay is larger than us now. I think Fond du Lac is even larger than Racine now.
Yeah.
So
stay tuned for another episode of...
yeah, we're going to have you back. I mean, this is interesting. You run that blog, which is...
Racine Uncensored.
Uncensored, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
There's so many of them. There's a Racine Uncovered, too, isn't there?
That's actually our Racine Journal Times offshoot.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then you're not going to get any news there.
Probably not. You will see mugshots of people caught with marijuana, though.
Yeah.
On my...
But we're going to have you back, and we're going to talk about another issue that came up at the meeting the other night, and that is body scanners.
Oh, yeah.
The Sheriff's Department has put in a requisition for 2 X-ray body scanners to make sure that nobody brings any contraband into the jail. And we've got some interesting statistics and opinions about that. So we're going to have you back real soon on that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you what, it's been good talking to you.
Oh, yeah.
And I hope you enjoyed today's show. And your website is?
Oh, it's Racine Uncensored. It's on Facebook. I do not put mug shots of any citizens, but I'll put mug shots of city officials. Watch out.
All right. Thanks for being here, Ricky. We're going to say thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week.